Become unemployable.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Unemployables. Today we have a special guest that you should have heard of if you haven't already. This guy has embodied what it means to be an entrepreneur. He had his own financial planning practice, and he created a movement on social media that has exploded exponentially to over 50,000 members. And that man's name is Ryan Michler. Ryan, how you doing, brother?
Good. How are you? I'm excited to be talking with you guys today.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
Good.
So I guess we'll start off with you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started into the entrepreneurship. I know you had a financial planning practice, and I was wondering if you had always been an entrepreneur or you made a transition from a 9-to-5.
Yeah, not always. My background is retail management. I spent a little time in the military. First off, I apologize about the echo. I'm remodeling in here, and so it's just this big empty cube right now. So I apologize. The audio's not good, but It is what it is. We'll get through it. But yeah, I spent a little time in the military. Retail's my background, and then when I went to Iraq in 2005 and 2006, my wife and I decided we didn't want to get back into retail when I got back because I wasn't interested in traveling all over the country anymore. I wasn't really interested in working nights and weekends and everything else, which has kind of come full circle. We can talk about that here in a minute. So I didn't really have an idea of what to do. Long story short, I got introduced to a financial advisor who was looking for some new advisors at the time, and took all of my study materials back to Iraq with me and studied in my downtime. And when I got back from Iraq, I got into the financial planning field, and it was my own business in a way. So that was really my leap into entrepreneurship. When I was managing retail stores, I was the manager, but the way that they had their compensation packages and everything worked out, it was very entrepreneurial driven as well, more like a franchise, if you will. So yeah, I did that for about 10 years. And then in 2015, started Order of Man, and obviously all the growth and relative success that's come with that. So I haven't always been an entrepreneur, but for the past, 15 years now, I've been on it on my own and killing or eating what I kill, I should say.
Yeah. So you said you didn't want to work nights and weekends, and that came full circle. Let's get back into that.
Yeah. Well, it's a little different now because I don't work nights and weekends because I have learned to set boundaries. But as I was launching Order of Man, well, I was in my financial planning practice, and as I launched Order of Man, I was doing a lot of early mornings, couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the afternoon. I'd take or evening, excuse me, and then I'd take weekend appointments for financial planning practice, and I'd be working on blog posts and podcasts on the weekend. Like I said, I don't do that now because I think the boundaries are important, and we're to the stage where I don't necessarily need to do that, which is nice because it allows me the flexibility to be with my family and spend time with my wife and kids. But yeah, for the first, I don't know, 2.5, almost 3 years of Order of Man, I mean, that's what it was. It was me just really busting my tail and working around the clock, it seemed like. And even now, I mean, it's my life, right? So I'm always on social media or whatever else, even in those quote unquote off hours.
Yeah, those boundaries are really important. I have, a wife. I've got 9 kids.
Do you really? Wow.
Yeah, 9 kids. 1 girl out of all 9. So
wow.
He's Irish. He's so I think they look at each other.
Yeah. The running joke is people like to ask me if I'm either Catholic or Mormon. So.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm Mormon. I've got 4. I don't have 9. So. Yeah.
Well, hey man, you got to catch up.
I do. Well, it's too late now. What's done is done. Yeah. Well, you got some room to move here, man.
Yeah. But no, those boundaries are really important. Between Nick and I, we each all own our own independent companies outside of the Unemployables, as well as various side projects that we're doing. And Nick doesn't have to worry about it too much as a single guy.
Yeah.
But with that family, establishing those boundaries and treating it like it's a 9-to-5 where you actually have the off days that you're not required to do anything, I think that's extremely important.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah. It like you said, it's critical that you figure out a way to prioritize what's important and then communicate those boundaries and not let people step over those things as well. Because they will. It's not devious. It's not intended to get at you or anything. But if you don't create your schedule, someone else will do it for you.
Absolutely. So so when you were setting those boundaries and you were kind of learning about when you can and can't work, when you should and shouldn't work, what kind of growing pains did you have? Like any relationships that went south, anything in your life that went south before you finally learned, or was it kind of smooth?
Learned with the boundaries specifically?
Yeah. Or like for me personally, it was like I started my company, Ground Shark Coffee, in August, which was at the time my busiest time of the year because I was working construction.
Sure.
So it was like I'd work 50, 60-hour weeks. I'd come home, work on the business for a little bit. I'd try to train, and all my relationships just went totally fucking south because I just kept pushing them down. So I had to kind of learn to renegotiate and reprioritize.
Well, I like that you said renegotiate. I mean, when you talk about having a relationship with another person, I think what a lot of guys will do, and gals as well, is they don't communicate those boundaries, right? And that's where the problems arise. You have these hidden agendas or these hidden social contracts that you don't communicate with anybody else. And so I might have this idea that I'm going to go work out or do jujitsu on Tuesday night, but if I don't communicate that to the people who are going to be impacted by it, it's going to create some problems. It's going to create some rifts in the relationship. So, I did have times like that where I might be going to do my own thing or focused on business, and my wife would be upset, and I couldn't figure out what the hell she was so upset about. And through work and communication and a lot of effort on both of our parts, I realized, I've got these things I want to do, and I'm not including her in on the process. And she's okay with this stuff. She likes that I'm doing these things, but she needs to know what it is I'm doing. I need to know what it is she's doing, and that open communication has solved a lot of those problems. Nothing catastrophic, but just little arguments and little fights about nothing, just trivial nonsense because we weren't on the same page.
Yeah, and she just wants some attention, and you're just like confused.
Right, because I want to give her attention, and I know she needs attention. And I'm like, well, what? I just gave you attention last night. Like, tonight's my night, right? And so I didn't realize that I hadn't shared those things with her.
Yeah. I started following you right around the time you started Order of Man.
Okay,
and
yeah.
I think is when I joined the Facebook group.
Yeah.
And I've probably listened to 90% of the podcast you put out. And what you just said about you're not communicating those expectations that you have for your own schedule to your wife resonates with something I heard in one of your podcasts that you did with your wife, is that resentment is born of unmet expectations.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you communicate those expectations, they can be met, but without them, no one knows what they are. So you're going to have that struggle. So
Right. I mean, we can all be on the same page and all be going towards the same direction, but my wife's got things she wants to do. I've got things I want to do. And usually those things are in alignment. If they're not, we can talk about those things and figure it out and come to some sort of mutual consensus or some give and take and some compromise. But yeah, unless you have the foundation for what those things are and a basis for communication, it's all going to go south.
Yeah, absolutely. So swinging a little bit into you starting the Order of Man, did you ever think at a point that something like that, now obviously with an entrepreneur, the biggest thing you can do is find a niche with a problem and then solve that problem.
Sure.
So did you ever think when you were first starting the Order of Man that you would be able to monetize it as quickly as you did, or period? Because you basically monetized, and I hate using this term, but you basically monetized a personal brand.
I don't know if that's accurate because when it's shifted over the past couple of years, when I started, it was more geared towards Order of Man. And I was at the head of the organization because I started it, but I really wasn't doing a whole lot of personal branding. But when I started, really what I wanted to do is create some revenue through ads. And I realized really, really quickly that would take millions and millions of people tuning in, coming to the website, listening to the podcast, which we have now. But when I started, I mean, that wasn't going to happen. So what was happening is I was taking a lot of time away from my financial planning practice to pursue things with Order of Man. And my wife and I were talking one evening, and she says, I'm really excited for you. This was must have been 7 or 8 months into the process, because I started in March of 2015, and this would have been October, November. She says, I'm really excited for you. You seem fulfilled. You seem happy. You seem like this is something that you're engaged in, that you enjoy doing. But you're taking time away from the financial planning practice, which is limiting family household income. So she said, I think you really ought to figure out a way to either scale back or find a way to make some money. And up until that point, I really hadn't thought too much of it because it was a hobby. It was something I enjoyed. It was kind of a passion, and I wasn't really looking at turning it into a business or a career or some sort of global movement, because I already had a good job. I was a financial advisor. The business was finally growing and starting to take off and run itself in a lot of ways. And so at this time I thought, I'm not quitting. If anything, I'm going to double down on this Order of Man thing. So I listened to a podcast. I can't remember who it was with, but the guy was talking about doing courses. So I'm like, well, I guess I could do a course. So I did a video or a blog post on 8 skill sets that guys need to master or learn to figure out in their life. And I thought, well, I'll just take these 8 and we'll talk about these 8 once a week. And then at the end of every couple of weeks, we'll do like a recap on a couple of them, and we'll do a video or something like that. So I put it out. I said, here's what we're roughly going to talk about. Here's what's going to be included. It's a Facebook group. We're going to get assignments and challenges, et cetera, et cetera. And I've got 12 spots. That's all I've got, 12 spots. And it's $100. I didn't know any better. I didn't know any different. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, like $100 for that? Like, it's crazy. But I didn't know any different. And I sold out of that thing immediately. I was like, whoa, I think we're onto something here, right? So we ran that, and we got about, I want to say maybe 7-8 weeks into the course, and the guys were like, hey man, when this is over, what are we going to do? What are we going to do then? I'm like,
what's next?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I haven't really thought anything. So we expanded it. It was called the Iron Council, still called the Iron Council. And at the end of that 12 weeks, we opened it up. It's an ongoing membership now. So it's a monthly membership as opposed to a one-time course. And we've got over 500 men in there. Price tripled. So it's been cool, man. It's been really cool. I know that's a really short answer to everything that's going on. And we can break that down on how I did that, because I know a lot of people are probably curious, but ultimately that's what happened.
Right. That's the meat and potatoes of it.
Right.
So it was kind of more like you just kind of fell into it. Like you were like, this is my passion and it's taking away from my family's income. And so I got to find a way to monetize it, or I got to cut back on it.
I don't want to say fall into, though, because I think that might be a trap and not really paint it correctly. I was fortunate in a lot of ways to come across the right messaging. I feel like I'm the right person to talk about it at the right time. There's a lot of fortunate events that happened in that progression.
Right. Okay. So like, I don't want to say fall into it again, but like,
yeah, because falling into it's really passive.
I'm looking at it like you kind of fell into it, but like you put yourself in a position where that would happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think falling in is just, you walk around and you stumble and you fall into something, and it's really very passive.
Right.
The way that I look at it is it was a lot more assertive, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have everything figured out, but it was deliberate and it was intentional of, okay, well, I need to make money. What can I do? Create a course. Okay, these guys want more. Then what do I do? Well, here's another offering. Right. So it wasn't just something that happened. I was fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. And like you just said, I was able to capitalize on that in a lot of ways because I was intentional about making sure it happened that way.
Mm-hmm. It's like that old saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Right. Or luck is when preparation and opportunity meet. Yep. Right. It's the same principle.
Yeah. You knew gravity was going to happen. So you stood in the right spot to fall into the right spot.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I didn't even know, frankly, I didn't know it was the right spot. I don't know why. It continues to work out. And the only thing I can attribute it to is that I think we've got our messaging down. I think the way that I share it is very real and genuine. and guys resonate with that. Cause there's a lot of these like figurehead type guys at the top of movements, and they're very unrelatable because they put themselves on pedestals they don't belong. And
yes.
and it's BS. So a lot of guys see that. I think that's why so many men resonate with what we're doing. It's like, I'm a normal guy. Like I'm an average guy, you know, I mowed the lawn last night and tugged my kids in and sang them songs to bed. You know, like I'm in this like office and you can see the Walter Thrash cause I'm remodeling it myself. Like I don't have some team coming in here and like building this thing out for me. It's just me. Right.
Right.
And I also think that society needs what it is I share. And so it's the right messaging at the right time. You know,
Definitely, man.
It's happening the way it needs to happen.
Yeah. And you see, that's something that has always kind of resonated with me, especially when I started following you. You know, I'm like, this guy's had ups and downs in his relationship. He's a dad. He struggles with the same type of decisions to make with his children that I struggle with.
Yeah.
But he doesn't portray himself as the Partridge Family. He bears it all. He's like, no, I screwed this up. I screwed that up. And the authenticity, and I know you hate that word.
I don't hate the meaning behind it. The word is just
the word
out.
Itself. It's played out.
Right.
It's cliched.
Right.
But no, the level of, and again, that word authenticity behind that is something that people actually resonate, because they get tired of seeing people that have it all figured out, but don't share the struggles they've had to get there. Because what a lot of people see when they look at someone's successes is just that. They see the success. Right. They don't see the sleepless nights. They don't see the stress. They don't see the arguments and the mini tiffs with the spouse, or the feelings of guilt and self-doubt and the imposter syndrome, where you're like, I'm a hack. Why would anybody want to buy anything from me? Mm-hmm. And I think you have been extremely fortunate to fall into something. And again, I'm not, fell into it, but you had a passion for something and you were able to monetize your passion.
Have you heard?
So many entrepreneurs can't do that.
Yeah, well, I don't think a lot of guys, a lot of what I would say wannabe entrepreneurs focus on it, right? Because they're scared of it, or they think that it's disingenuous to ask people to pay them for something that's so helpful. I have a lot of people actually push back on that. They'll say, well, I thought you were in this for the goodness of your heart. I'm like, well, I can be both, right? I can be
absolutely
for helping you, and I can also be in it to make a profitable business and the kind of life that I desire, and the vacations and the trips and the things and the activities and experiences with my family. Like I got to pay for that stuff, right? You don't go into work for free, whether you enjoy it or not. You don't go to work for free.
Right.
So it's like, what that tells me is that people have a problem asking for money. I have no problem asking people to invest in themselves. None at all. And that bridging that gap for myself and any entrepreneur is an absolute necessity. If they can't bridge that gap, just go do your 9 to 5 and don't worry about it, because you're not going to make it.
Yeah. Have you heard of the concept of Ikigai? Ikigai?
Of what now?
Ikigai? I think I'm saying it right.
No. I don't think so.
I think it's a Japanese word, but it means, it's like the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. So like any given combination of those four is like a passion, a mission, profession, or a vocation, depending on which four. But like all of it together is like that purpose that you feel when everything's just lined up. When you're like, this is what I love, this is what people need, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I can get paid for. And it's like, it's all right the one. And it seems like you've really found that with the Order of Man. And it's
yeah, I'm not really familiar with the concept, but just based on what you said, I think that's probably pretty accurate. Yeah.
Explaining it is kind of a rabbit hole, so we won't go down there, but I'll send it to you.
I will say too, though, I think this is important, is because this isn't my first attempt either, right? So it's not something that, you try something and it's just supposed to work out because you tried it. No. I mean, you can try a lot of things and really pour your heart and soul into it and it not work. Yeah. There's this like really weird thing on Twitter and Instagram and social media where it's like, try your hardest and dream big and everything will happen. It's like, no, it won't. Like that's not the case for me. I was in retail and I really enjoyed elements of it, and then realized I don't like certain elements of it. I started working with a financial planning firm, and then I went on my own and did my own thing for 6 or 7 years. Then I started a podcast with a financial planning practice and realized, man, I really love the medium of podcasting, but I don't want to talk about financial services. So I pivoted and shifted gears to Order of Man. So this isn't like I tried this one time and hit this home run or grand slam. Like I've tried a lot of different things that I feel like at this point have been preparing me for what I'm doing right now. But it's
Definitely.
not the first attempt for sure.
Yeah. I always try to think about it like,
pause real quick. I just want to close this door. It swung open, and I think that will just make sure that we're not hearing little kiddos running around. Hold on one second, okay?
Yeah, we'll get Dan to clip this little section out.
just speed it up. Welcome back.
All right, there we go.
Yep.
We've got an old home, and doors don't close exactly the way they're supposed to in all the rooms. So
That's character. That's all that is.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's just good bones in the house. My home was built in the
Exactly.
40s. So
Okay. Yeah.
So,
So you know.
Ryan, you mentioned that you train jiu-jitsu. How long you been training?
Well, I started a little over a year ago, but I would probably say 4 or 5 months because I was doing it for a couple of months, and then I took 2 or 3 months off. Then I went back for a month, and then I took 2 months off. So I've been pretty consistent over the past month, more than I ever have, and I love it, man. It's unbelievable. It's incredible.
It's an obsession. I've been training for 3.5 years now, and Jeff has kind of on and off for, what'd you say, 8? Yeah.
8 months or 8 years?
years.
Oh, 8 years. Yeah. Awesome.
So it's dude, it's amazing, and the presence of the presence and the clarity of mind you get after training is
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
integral.
And how much everything translates over to life.
Oh,
know?
yeah.
It's like, as a new white belt, I've always prided myself on being athletic, being strong, assertive, even dominant and aggressive at times. And it just doesn't work like that in jiu-jitsu.
Nope.
Very rarely does that work in life as well. You know, you can't bulldoze through somebody. You could bulldoze through another white belt, no doubt. Like I can out physicality, if you will, another white belt, but I can't do that to even a blue belt.
Right.
And so it's really frustrating. And then if you learn that it's not all about just being dominant and aggressive, but being patient and being smart and looking for openings and gaps and not burning yourself out, which I have a tendency of doing. These are all very translatable to life and entrepreneurship as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, there's a big parallel with that, especially if you kind of look how it translates into a hierarchy model of, for example, a chimpanzee troop. You know, you've got the alpha chimp who's got, you know, the highest status, but he's not always the biggest. Mm-hmm. If he's not the biggest, it's because he's using his cunning and his guile and his intelligence. And that's something that you have to use in jiu-jitsu, because I don't care if you bench 350, you're going to get, you know, mopped up by a 125-pound kid.
Right.
Who don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fascinating. Yeah, I was training last night, in fact, and I was rolling with this guy I'd never rolled with. He's a blue belt, and I get swept a lot. I mean, that's something I've really had to work on. And it was cool because I knew what he was going to do because I'd seen him before, and I knew what he was going to do. And he's going to try to sweep my knee, kick my knee out and sweep me, right?
Yeah, scissor sweep.
So I deliberately put my knee there a little closer than I thought I would. And as I watched him try to extend that leg, I just lifted my knee up, stepped over, and got into half guard pretty quickly. You know, it's like, I mean, that's a small little win, but at the same time, it's like, oh, okay, like I don't have to bulldoze through this guy. I just have to set it up correctly, use a little cunningness, you know, and make a move. And it worked out. So
so that scissor sweep that you're talking about, that's like an integral part of my game.
Yeah.
And so when I'll try to hit that knee and I expect them to step over it. And then there's another sweep you can do, and I forget what it's called, where you basically pull them back the other way over your shoulder. And so that's an interesting point, because like one of my favorite ways to think about jiu-jitsu is that it's just layers of traps. Like you expected him to do that, and so you got the pass, got to half guard. But if he had expected that from you, he would have then gotten the sweep.
Right.
Which then there's another layer where if he had like or if you had reacted in time, you might have passed to side control or even all the way to the back if you had passed that second sweep. So it's like you almost, it's such a beautiful thing because you can set a trap and then they can know you're setting a trap and stride boldly into your trap, setting another trap of their own to catch you. And it's like, it's the layers there. It's so cool.
It is cool.
It's live action chess.
It is. Yeah, it's chess with consequences, right?
Yep.
Like and then you get a big guy on you trying to quite literally strangle you, and you get done with class and you're just completely physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted, but at the same time you feel so fulfilled and it feels good. It feels right. You know what I mean? It's pretty incredible.
It's like from Fight Club when he said, after Fight Club, the rest of the world gets the volume turned down.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So what's your,
and you know how you had just said that it's mentally taxing and emotionally exhausting, but at the end of it all, it just feels right. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I've experienced as an entrepreneur. The day that I got my product in my hand was incredible. Now I had already sold pre-orders. And so I was pretty stoked about that.
Yeah.
Second, you held something that you created in your hand, that just wave of emotion came through. And I know you wrote a book, Sovereignty. I actually bought it and had you autograph it for my son for his birthday last year. And I appreciate that, by the way.
Yeah. Happy to.
But since you don't have a physical product outside of your book, but when you first started Order of Man and you first got that sale for that course that became the Iron Council, did you get that same kind of experience? Like, were you validated in your efforts internally at the point where you like, wait a minute, these people bought something from me that I created?
I don't know if I was validated as much as I was surprised, quite frankly. I remember the first guy that signed up and I'm like, well, this guy must be a moron. He signed up for this thing. Like, I don't even fully know what I'm doing. He doesn't know me. Why would he pay me for this? And so it was a little bit surreal. It was a lot surreal trying to figure out why somebody would pay. And then at the same time, I felt like I had this moral obligation now to follow through. I'm like, somebody paid me. They took money out of their paycheck or their hard-earned bank account and they gave it to me. And now I have this moral obligation to put something together that's going to exceed their expectations and add more value than what they're paying me for. So it was a lot of I felt a lot of responsibility at that point, unlike I had before. Because that before it was just me yapping my mouth and talking about the things that I thought were interesting or fascinating or wanted to improve upon myself. But man, when somebody starts paying you and starts investing in you, there's a lot of responsibility there. And I took a lot of pride in that. And I still take a lot of pride in that. I take pride in knowing that there's 500 plus guys that have enough faith in me for whatever reason that they think that it's worthy of them paying me to instruct and to coach and to lead and guide and mentor, whether that's that or somebody buys my book or buys a hat or whatever. I always take it as a ultimate compliment that they're willing to do that. And it's a lot to be proud of. I'm very proud of what we've created. And it's every time somebody, even if it's not paying, even if just somebody sends me a message and says, hey man, me and my wife a year ago were separated and I wasn't seeing my kid or I was broke or I was 50 pounds overweight and I've been reading your book and implementing some of the things that you talk about on the podcast and I've just completely flipped my life around. I love hearing stuff like that. And those are the things that validate, to your point, Jeff, what it is we're doing and the value of what we're adding to life and society in general.
Definitely.
Yeah. And my company is nowhere near on the level of internal significance as what the Order of Man is. But I think the best compliment I ever got was from a guy who's actually been wanted me to tell you hello, Adam Lane Smith. He said he's been emailing you back and forth.
Cool.
But he told me that his beard was always so scratchy that his infant daughter didn't want him like kissing and nuzzling on her. But since he's been using the Rugged Legacy beard balm, his daughter wants to pull his face in closer and get him. Like, okay, that right there kind of hit me here.
Yeah, for
So
sure. I don't know that I want to challenge what you just said, that it's nowhere near the internal significance of what we've created. I don't know if that's true. I really don't. I think it is. I think it is. I think if it's meaningful to you and it enhances and adds value in your life, that gives you more opportunity for experiences and a greater ability to do the things that you want to do, whether it's vacations or connecting with your family or showing people what's possible. If you have an idea and you put it into action, but then it helps, like this guy, Adam, that you were talking about, where he now has a deeper connection with his daughter. Even if it's somebody who just wants to look good and they feel a little bit more confident because their beard looks a little cleaner and they hold their head up a little higher and their chest out a little fuller, and that helps them secure a job interview or get a date or just feel better about themselves. I don't care what it is. I just think there's so much value if you have the value, if you have the meaning and significance behind it. And I know you do, because we're connected and I follow you and I know what it means to you. But I'd be very careful of discounting the intrinsic value that our offerings have, regardless of what they are.
Well,
Don't sell yourself short, Jeff.
I stand here corrected. And this is why the Order of Man is as successful as it is, because this guy sees layers.
Well, thank you. I guess, I don't know. I just don't ever want people to discount what they do and the value they add. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I know what it took for me to get to the level that I am now. And I know that there's a long way for me to still go to get to the level I want to be. But I think I was just kind of, like Nick said, selling myself short a little bit, that I was brushing it to the side. Yeah, I fix beards, I fix hair, but there are other things that come along with that. When, like you said, the person feels better about themselves, or their kid all of a sudden is now okay with them rubbing their beard in their face for
yeah, what's that worth, right?
That's worth a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And I go down that rabbit hole sometimes too, Jeff, because I mean, you could easily say like, oh, I'm just making coffee. But like, part of our shtick is like, we want to make coffee that's so fucking good, you don't need to put cream and sugar in it, which means you don't have the guiltiness, like that guilt in the back of your head thinking this is killing my diet to drink this coffee because I have to put cream and sugar because it's bad. And it's like, and that's part of the reason why it's Ground Shark. That's why we're focused on fighters and jiu-jitsu people, because it's like, it all wraps together and it makes your diet and it makes your weight cut and it makes your life more effective. And it's like, you don't sell, like me, I think about it like, I don't sell coffee. I sell the energy you need to live the life you want to live. Right. And like for you, it's like, you don't sell beard balm and hair products. You sell the confidence in your physical appearance that you need to live the life you want to live. Right.
That's going on my website. I'm not going to give you credit.
There you go, man. Steal it.
So Ryan, what's coming up next for you? What are your plans for growing the Order of Man? I know you've grown exponentially in the 4 years since I've been following you, and it's been insane to watch that level of growth and the amount of lives and engagement that you're impacting. I just want to know what's coming next.
Well, we've got a lot. You know, I just moved here to Maine. We talked a little bit about that. I've got a barn just out the door here. I see we've done events for the past 3 years. We're going to do a lot more events, and guys are going to stay here in my barn on my property. We've got some good strategic partners to be able to put together some cool experiences for the guys that a lot of these guys probably have never experienced before. Part of that's jiu-jitsu, archery, things like that. So we're going to be doing those. We've got an event here in the next couple of months. In fact, actually about a month and a half now. And then I think one of the things that a lot of guys talk about is being able to band with and connect with other men locally and regionally. So I really see Order of Man chapters coming online relatively soon. Something I've been thinking about for years, but thinking about the logistics and how to make it work and how to do it right and what's the value added there. But I definitely see that being valuable and needed. And so I think between the events and some sort of a regional or local chapters is going to be probably the next evolution of what we're doing.
That is going to be insane.
Yeah, it is going to be insane. In fact, I'm a little worried about it, quite honestly, which is part of the reason I haven't fully pulled the trigger, because I know as soon as I do, it's going to explode, and that's good. That's great. But I don't know if I have the infrastructure in place to do it in a way that allows me to still maintain the priorities of my life. I'm not going to be traveling around from city to city, country to country, 52 weeks a year. I'm not interested in doing that. So I've got to have the logistics set up where it can run, and I have the people in place that it can be effective for as many guys as possible. But I don't have to do everything because I'm not interested in doing that.
Right. I think
that's how
part of getting that infrastructure in place is really important, because you don't want your message watered down.
Right. For sure. Yeah. And what would keep, I mean, some of the concerns, just because we're talking about entrepreneurship, is, I'm constantly trying to blow up the island. Like, what could go wrong? Well, the biggest thing is why would anybody pay or invest in being part of an order of man, brotherhood or society, when they can just go out and do it themselves, So I mean, what's the value I would even add versus somebody just going and running it themselves? And in fact, I think they probably should. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. You can be successful when you find a problem and you're willing to step in and be the solution. In a way, put yourself between the problem and the solution, right? So a lot of these guys talk about getting together, and I've told them in the Facebook group, we've got 57,000 guys in there, and like, hey, I want to get together with guys. I'm like, do it. Go ahead. Like, nobody's holding you back from doing anything and telling you not to do it. And you know how many guys do it? None.
Yeah.
No, nobody does it. So I'll do it. and I'll charge to do it. Right. And some guys will say, well, why are you charging for this? I'm like, go create your own. I'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
But they still won't do it.
It's like, that's why I'm charging.
That's right. You become indispensable in a way, and valuable. So valuable that people are willing to pay for your services and offerings.
Yeah, I think I had mentioned you in the last podcast with Hunter Drew. Mm-hmm. We were talking with Hunter, and he had spoken about how you gave Hunter pretty much all the tips that he needed to start the Fraternity of Excellence.
Yeah.
And Hunter, Nick and I are both in the FOE, and we both gone to Hunter to set up the Unemployables, and he gave us everything. And I've had people come to me wanting, how do I make beard balm? I give them the recipe, because 99% of the people out there are not going to execute. No one can be a better Michler than Michler. No one can be a better Drew than Drew. No one can be a better Rugged Legacy than Rugged Legacy.
Right.
No one can be better Ground Shark than Ground Shark. But,
and the ones that can, and I not say be you, but be successful, they're going to figure it out whether you help them or not.
Exactly.
And you might as well be an ally with that individual.
Exactly. That's like how partnerships are formed.
Right.
Exactly. Like, if you help them, they're going to remember that. Like,
exactly.
Whether they compete with you later or not, like, it might even turn into, like, maybe they do, like, Jeff, maybe you give someone a recipe and they make a beard balm that's really similar to yours, and like their branding is very competitive with yours. And it's like, but then at that point you help them. And so, barring them being an absolute like savage at business and actually going after you, it might even turn into like a fun, healthy rivalry that makes you both better.
Exactly. Competitive marketing.
Yeah,
exactly. Some of the best brand advice and marketing advice I ever heard was from this book called named Creating a Story Brand.
Mm-hmm.
And or Building a Story Brand. It's by, I think, Donald Miller. And he talks about how when you're branding and when you're marketing, you basically tell the story of your customer. So like your customer in the story is effectively like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. And you set yourself up as Obi-Wan, where you're not the star of the story. And you touched on this a little bit earlier when you talked about personal branding, how so many people they try to make themselves the star of the story. And that's why people don't really like that as much. But you've kind of set yourself up as that guide, as Obi-Wan, where it's like, you're telling people who sign up for the Order of Man, like, this is your story. This is your life. I'm here to help you have the life that you want. Right. And if they come to a stopping point where they don't want to set up the meetups or they don't want to invest something or whatever, it's like, you'll do it, but they got to pay you because that's how you make your own living.
Right.
You'll do it and you'll make them the star of it.
Yeah, that's well, it is. I mean, and it's important that you do that. It even comes down to, I get a lot of people who say, thank you for helping me, or thank you for this. And I always try to be gracious and accepting that thank you, because who am I to decline a gift that somebody's giving to me, even if it's something as simple as 2 words, thank you. But I always, in addition to saying, well, you're welcome, thank you for acknowledging that. In addition to that, I put it back on them. I said, maybe I've helped you in some small way, but you're the one that's taking action. You're the one that's doing it. We're not at a lack of information in society. I mean, not with anything that we're talking about here. And yet so many people aren't willing to implement that. So when somebody comes and says, hey, you've helped me transform my life. I mean, maybe I gave you some information, but ultimately, or maybe I was the catalyst, but ultimately you had to tap into that. Yeah. Ultimately you had to take action. And it is really, really important that we help other people win. That's why we're here. We're here to win. We're here to grow and learn, and we're here to help other people do the same thing. And when you do it, it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's fulfilling. It's amazing. It's incredible what we can create.
And you touch people's lives in ways you'd never ever expect, and it's so cool. I had this kid. I want to say he's like 17, 18, maybe 19 at the most. He hit me up on Twitter. And he was like, hey, my dad owns this tile company. He had a business partner who was just jacking around. So he cut him off, and now he's going it alone. And he has no idea how to get clients. He doesn't speak any English, like only Spanish. And I want to help him, and I don't know how to help him. And I was like, well, what did his business partner do? His business partner was basically like operations and sales manager. He was the one going out and getting more projects, but he just wasn't good at it. And I was like, dude, do what your dad's business partner would have done, but do it better. And it just, like, for some reason blew his mind. Like, he just never thought about that. And now, like, every couple months he hits me up or he posts a tweet or something, and he is just crushing it. And he's like, dude, I can't thank you enough. I'm like, I didn't do this, man. I might have pointed you in the right direction, but you did this. Like, This is all you.
Right. Exactly.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah. We had the same thing with one of our clients in the Unemployables. He started off freelance copywriter, trying to get into writing web copy, a little bit of graphic design, a little bit of web design, struggling to get clients. All we did was point him to a guy who runs a Facebook group with over 50 entrepreneurs in it. And he had to do the pitch himself. He had to present himself to them. All I did was introduce him, say, hey, shake this guy's hand. And now he's got over 50 clients that he's writing web copy for. And he comes and he'll thank us. We didn't do that. You did. Mm-hmm. But I think of what a lot of it comes down to, and it's not with every entrepreneur, but most, is that for some reason, they feel that they need permission to succeed. They need someone else, whether it be you in the Iron Council, or us with the Unemployables, or any other guy who's trying to guide everyone else to success. It's like they need to be told, you can go do this. You don't need to ask for permission. You can go do it. And I think that's what separates, the guys who are just, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with 9 to 5, but the ones who want to be entrepreneurs, the wantrepreneurs, they can't break that mindset of, I don't need permission to go out and make this happen. Mm-hmm. I can do this.
Man, I still struggle with that.
Yeah. It's the imposter syndrome that people have. It's, I'm writing a novel right now.
Just talking to himself right now.
Yeah. And, and I look at what I'm writing, I'm going, who the hell is going to read this? But I don't need someone else's validation to go and try to make something happen. And that's what I think the Order of Man has done for so many people. You said you got 57,000 people in the Order of Man. And those kind of numbers are insane. But those guys all are hearing the same thing from you. This is your life. This is your story. If you need help, I can give you the wrench, but you're going to climb under the car and make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, even in the Facebook group, a lot of times people ask questions and my response is, well, what do you think you should do?
Exactly.
And that's so telling.
How so? What do you mean?
Like in two ways. Your response being, what do you think you should do, is very much like indicative of your personality and your kind of coaching style of like, you can figure it out. Like if you need help, I'll help you, but try something on your own first.
Yeah, for sure.
Like come to me saying, hey, I tried this, it didn't work. What went wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can actually help. And then the second thing is, man, I lost that train of thought. We'll stick with that.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll give you an example as well, just in maybe in the family or personal life, is even if my child comes to me and asks me for help, or, hey, Dad, will you help me do this? Or I can't figure this thing out. I'm like, well, what are you going to try? And we'll work through it together. You know what I mean? Well, I could try this. I could do this. I could fix this. I could, whatever. It's like, good, do that. And we'll do it together. And I know it's going to fail. Like, I know it's going to fail.
Yeah.
And then I'll watch my child do it and I'll say, tell me how it went. Well, this worked, but this didn't. Okay, good. What do we need to fix now? Because what I want independent thinkers in my children. I don't want a child who's going to have to rely upon me forever. Right. And I don't want guys maybe it's profitable for me to have guys who are dependent upon me or somebody else on my team, but I'm not interested in having guys who are around forever. Like we have guys that leave the Iron Council and they've been there for 12 months or even 2 years. And they say things like, I've learned so much and I've got so much value from this. I feel like I'm ready to go out and implement this stuff. And I don't feel like I need it anymore. I'm good.
That's a victory.
That's the point. And a lot of times these guys come back and they get their fix, if you will, and then they go back out again. And I love that. I don't want people around forever. If that's the case, what am I doing? I'm not even helping these individuals. I've become a crutch for them and it's hindering them, not helping.
Yeah, that would be extremely exhausting if you were the one that had to solve everyone else's problems rather than give them the ability to solve their own.
Yeah. Yes, it would. Absolutely.
That's something I look for in doctors and in coaches and in like everything. It's like it's an interesting thing because like in a lot of places and in those roles, like the better you are at your job, the less clients you have because like my chiropractor pretty early on gave me a whole list of stretches and stuff because I hurt my jaw and it got worse because I have a kind of slouchy posture. At least I did. I've gotten better. But anyway, he was like, here's a bunch of stretches you can do. Here's a bunch of things you can do to keep you from coming in to see me. And that when he said that was like, this is exactly where I want to be.
Right.
Because it was like, and it's the same thing with coaches where like a strength coach or a gym, anything really. It's like the better you are at your job, the less you have to do your job.
Right.
Same thing with parenting.
Yeah. As a leader, you should try to make yourself obsolete.
That's the point. Leaders raise leaders, right? Not followers.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, you need to work yourself out of a job. You're leading these men in the Iron Council and in the Order of Man to take charge of their own lives and do what they need to be doing. And you're there to help them, but after a little bit, you're going to kick them out of the nest and say, "Do what you got to do."
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So you said coming up next for you, you're trying to make it more of a local and kind of break it down to layers, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the Order of Man. How about in your personal life? What's next for you there? Are you just moved to Maine? What's the goal there?
I don't have one actually. The only reason
I enjoying it, huh?
That's the point. Like I know I'm just supposed to have a goal and everything else, and I've got things I want to accomplish. I've got fitness goals and relational goals and things like that. But as far as being out here, I just came out for an adventure. I have no expectation, nothing I'm trying to meet out here other than just be out here, be present, learn some new things, meet some new people, have some great experiences and see where it goes from here. We're going to do some more traveling, travel out of the country in the next couple of months will be fun with my wife and I. We might be doing some homeschooling with our kids, which will be new for us, but something that I feel like will be pretty rewarding and fulfilling as well. That's about keep working on my jiu-jitsu game, keep lifting, just keep living life, man. It's my goal.
Welcome to the jiu-jitsu rabbit hole, dude.
That's right.
It goes deep and deep and deep and deeper.
It's good, man. It's good. That's what I want.
Yep.
It's like when you read your first self-help book, you read 37 more self-help books. It's no different.
Exactly. Yeah. It just keeps going and going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. That's what I'm looking forward to.
So we're coming up on the 1 hour mark. So Nick, you have a question you like to ask everyone. And Ryan, I prepared you for this yesterday.
Oh, I hope I remember what it is.
So if there was one thing that you've learned, like philosophically, or any kind of one little gem that you could leave everybody with, or like one thing that to you was a paradigm shift, what would that be?
That you're responsible for your life. You know, it's not, if guys are listening, it's not your wife's job to make sure you're happy. If a woman's listening, it's not your husband's job to make sure that you're secure. It's not your boss's job to make sure you have a job. It's not your client's job to make sure you get paid. It's none of that stuff. Some of that stuff will happen. It's not the president's job to make sure that you have health insurance or whatever. Like, all of that is you. And that's why I wrote that book, Sovereignty. It's about taking control and taking ownership and responsibility for your life and being a sovereign individual. And that doesn't mean that we can't rely upon people. It doesn't mean we can't help each other out and accept help where it's offered. But finding a way to make yourself more capable of doing things on your own will always yield results. It will always be in your best interest. A lot of guys in the Order of Man and Iron Council are struggling, for example, in their relationship. And I tell them, now's the time to focus on you. Focus on you. Don't focus on what she's doing and how she's changed or what she wants. Focus on becoming the best version of yourself you possibly can, and let the chips fall where they may. And whether it works out, and it might not work out. The relationship with your wife might not work out, but whether it does or not, it's always the best time to work on yourself. It's always the best time to make yourself more capable. It's always the best time to cut the leash that you may have had tied to somebody else or been dependent upon somebody else. And that's my message: is be a sovereign individual. Live free of relying upon other people in order for you to live the kind of life you want.
Give yourself the permission to succeed, right?
Yeah, well, definitely. That too. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's fantastic. For those wondering, we will have the link to Sovereignty in the show notes. So Ryan, where can people find you?
Orderofman.com is our headquarters. And since you're listening to a podcast, go listen to ours as well. Order of Man, wherever you listen to podcasts, that's the best place. And then Ryan Michler on Instagram and Twitter. My last name's Michler.
Right on. Cool. And Jeff, you want to tell everybody how they can support the podcast while they're here?
Oh, absolutely. Guys, if you're looking to support the podcast, you can go to www.unemployables.co. You can scroll through the tab. You'll see our membership options. Right now, we are running a special, extremely incredible discount for joining the Unemployables. You just go to the checkout, enter the code BREAK95, and you'll be brought into our exclusive, handsomely rewarded. You'll be brought into our exclusive chat group with unlimited access to Nick, Dan, and myself, as well as a litany of other resources that you'll be able to benefit from as an up-and-coming entrepreneur.
Right on. Ryan, thank you so much for coming in, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely.
Become unemployable.